Detours. Brought to you by Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. Okay, Associate Clinical Professor Ford Dyke is many things at Auburn. He's got a PhD in kinesiology, works as a performance-based psychologist with teams and coaching. And Ford, this year I caught up with a couple of the coaches from the basketball squads, Christina Schwab, who coached the women's Paralympic team, and Rob Taylor, who you work with there at Auburn. And they have been talking more and more, and I've heard more and more about this within sports, not only within the adaptive world, but, all across sports, working with performance-based psychologists. Talk about a little bit about what that means, and what is it that you bring to the table when you're called upon to help these athletes?
Yeah, Bob. So my background as an undergrad was in psychology, and I always had a interest in athletics as an athlete myself. And it wasn't until I came to Auburn University as a master's student in which I started to study exercise science. So I kind of went from neck above and then neck below into the vehicle. But then I realized that those two things are pretty interconnected and interdependent. So I went on into my PhD, kinesiology, which is an umbrella term for a lot of different subfields. But my main focus was psychophysiology. So the mind-body, body-mind connection. How do we utilize certain techniques to, when we get to a level of performance, make sure we're hitting those markers as much as possible without burnout, without so much stress on our systems that we're causing anxiety, we're causing depression, we're causing stress. So it's a multifaceted approach. And while I was a graduate student, I was fortunate enough to be exposed to certain curriculum here on Auburn's campus, which ultimately led me into work with the wheelchair basketball team. So I was the strength coach from 2012 to 2016. Coach Rob Taylor shows up in 16 as our new head coach. I was moving into my dissertation year. On a handshake, he said, I think we can start to do stuff. And then my relationship and rapport, really in mentorship with him, started to grow and grow and grow. So at first, it was, work with the team once a semester, just kind of give them an overview as to what is mindfulness at Auburn, why is it important for us to focus on our respiration, our hydration, our nutrition, recovery, and sleep, the pillars of performance and health, essentially. And then that started to grow into, hey, coach, I think I can provide some perspective just by observing on the sideline. So I wasn't necessarily on the bench per se, but I was more outside, kind of a 30,000 foot, 15,000 foot view. I would give him that feedback behind the scenes. And then that kind of then blossomed to, well, why don't you start coming to home tournaments and then go on the road? And then, here we are now in 2025 and the most successful season. I'm knocking on wood because we're not done yet, but we're 14-3, and to bookmark it, it's February 5th, 2025. So just to see this program go from what it was in 2012 all the way until 16 when Coach Rob Taylor came, and now is really special. And I'm a small piece of the entire puzzle. I just try to make sure that the athletes and the staff are bridged together and they're utilizing the core principles of performance-based psychology, psychophysiology, kinesiology, biomechanics, anything from a sports performance standpoint, even data analytics, data visualization, to ensure that when it comes to crunch time, when it comes to pressure time, that all of our basic needs are met and we're able to get to where we want to go. Because our goal is one thing, but our intention, our roadmap, our GPS to get to that is a completely a different thing. So it's an exciting opportunity.
Or do they tend to, do they tend to come to you and say, Doc, I need a little bit of help here. Help me get over the hump. I keep missing this one shot. I keep making these same bonehead moves. And, ultimately a high performance athlete can tend to get down on themselves. So what type of technique will you use to help them embrace what it is that you bring to the table?
It's a great question, but I'm not going to give my playbook out because that's the special place that we have here at Auburn University. But I'll give you a few different perspectives. So number one, I think it's all about establishing rapport. I'm this person that an 18-year-old comes into the program and I'm referenced as a support staff member and I have a title and sure, I'm a professor. And so that maybe could be a little intimidating for an 18-year-old freshman. But I always kind of take if you build it, they'll come and then wait for them to approach. But also along the way, drop them some nuggets, drop them some perspective and try to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. But I always try to leverage what we've worked with in the past, meaning what is a sophomore helping with? How is a junior or a senior or a grad student? And then how maybe is a grad assistant How is then the support staff? How is the head coach? So one of our core principles here at Auburn University is family. And I take that seriously because in the Auburn family, we're all looking out for each other. So do you need to fine tune to help with your missed shots or you're missing defensive sets or you're not doing your job in transition? That's one thing. But also, we're human beings. And maybe there's something happening outside of being a student athlete or being a support staff or being a head coach that I'm happy to talk through. But just like I said to coach this morning, the minute a red flag is raised from my perspective, I know that we have resources on campus that can help with the situation. So by no means do I gatekeep. My job is to make sure that we're providing the best resources possible for not only the staff and the athletes, but the entire program as a whole. And luckily here at Auburn, we're pretty blessed that we have access to some world-renowned people on campus.
We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sports and Spokes magazine. For nearly 50 years, they've produced stories on iconic athletes performing at the top of their game, given generational coverage of sports dating back to the 1970s, and they've shown the way with exciting and timeless magazine cover shots. To stay on top of all the latest news from the world of high-performance adaptive sports, go to sportsandspokes.com. Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. I would think probably 25, 30 years ago, I went to the Paralympics in '88, which really ages me. I mean, we would have ultimately laughed at our coach if they said, well, maybe go talk to a sports psychologist because, you're getting down on yourself because your time is 5 seconds off. How did we get to the point where we recognized that the psychological edge of this is as critical as what you were saying, nutrition, weightlifting, working out on the court, trying to make the baskets? How does this all come together into one piece?
So I think that, the way it looks from the outside is everything is very singular and siloed. We kind of see the weight training. We see the X's and O's in media and film breakdown. We see the conditioning. We see athletes maybe going to the cafeteria, but we don't see it all in a full picture approach. And the approach from a psychological standpoint is just like any other bit of training. If you're missing a certain weight in your weight room, if you're missing a certain time in your conditioning, if you're missing a certain amount of macros or micros from your nutrient standpoint, there will be deficits in the outcome, meaning your performance. So my job as a performance coach is to make sure that any of those gaps are filled and provide as much information as possible, be the resource that we can start to put into place systems to make sure that when our athletes are brought in and when they work through the program and when they leave, because there will be a transitional point, that it's as smooth sailing as possible. Now that's the goal, but that's not always the reality. So you're going to have people who family members are sick or dogs pass away or their cars break down or they fail a test. That's all going to have effect on your mindset and your mentality towards life and therefore your sport. As a former athlete, you're aware sports are really just a microcosm of life. Everything that happens in life can happen in one match, one situation, one game. So it's a very high pressure, high intense environment. So how do we make sure that we have the right tools, the right resources, the right skill sets for our 18 to 22-ish year olds to make sure they're set up for success? Also, the longevity and the sustainability for life after sports.
I couldn't agree more because I know how difficult it can be to lose. It's always very joyous to win, but sometimes when you get down, it's a perpetuating cycle. And I would have to assume that's where you come in to help break that cycle.
Definitely. It's part of the maybe mentality is what I share with athletes. When you're on a high, we're going so well, we're never going to stop. Maybe we're on a low, things are never going to get better. We're down in a rut. Maybe you just stay within the moment. You apply that situational awareness to what you have control of in order to set yourself up for success in the future.
Ford, thank you so much. I mean, as a performance-based psychologist, obviously you're starting to really make a difference. I hear more and more coaches that I talk to and players just really, speak highly of the concept of bringing the whole psychological game into the other aspects of the game of sports. So thank you so much for the insights.
My pleasure, Bob. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.